The morning reaches this narrow strip of ground long before the rest of the world seems to wake. It is a space defined by the weight of the house on one side and the soft, breathing texture of the ivy on the other. There is a specific kind of silence here, one that feels held in place by the brickwork and the flagstones. To step out from the kitchen door is to enter a different pace of existence, where the transition from interior life to the garden is almost seamless. The stone underfoot is cool, retaining the memory of the night's dew. The chair sits in a state of permanent invitation, a small island of stillness in the path of the sun. It is not a place for grand gestures or labor, but for the simple act of being present while the kettle boils or the house remains quiet. The air is heavy with the scent of damp earth and wood. Every line of the enclosure suggests a boundary that protects this stillness. One notices the way the light catches the uneven edges of the masonry, turning a simple wall into a landscape of shadow and grit. There is no urgency in this corridor. It is a room without a ceiling, a part of the floor plan that happened to be paved with stone instead of wood. The proximity to the home makes it an extension of the hallway, a place where the daily rhythm finds a moment to slow down and align with the slow creep of the shadows. The threshold is where the domestic and the natural meet in a quiet, unspoken agreement. Looking out from the doorway, the gravel courtyard appears as a steady, unmoving plane of gray and gold. The enclosure is absolute. The walls of the house and the garden boundaries create a pocket of air that feels distinct from the street beyond. There is a profound sense of containment in this view. The single pot in the corner is a focal point of absolute stasis, its fired clay surface catching the warmth of the descending sun. The shadows move with a glacial patience, stretching across the crunch of the stones. This is not a landscape to be traversed, but a scene to be lived alongside. It is the backdrop to the afternoon, a visual constant that anchors the wandering mind. The silence here is layered, composed of the distant hum of the neighborhood filtered through the high walls and the immediate, heavy stillness of the courtyard itself. Nothing moves. The air is still. The relationship between the interior warmth and the exterior cool is marked only by the frame of the door. To watch the light change in this small square of earth is to witness the day passing with a gentle, rhythmic certainty. It is a space that asks for nothing and offers a sense of completion. The textures of stone and clay are the only narrators here, speaking of permanence and the beauty of small, enclosed horizons. Between the white-painted walls of the cottage, a small wooden platform serves as a sanctuary of light and green. The space is so intimate that it feels like a secret kept by the architecture. The ferns rise in soft, feathered columns, their fronds barely stirring in the dead air of the alcove. Sunlight breaks through the canopy above in scattered, glowing coins that dance across the timber grain. The table, holding its lone glass, suggests a recent departure or a pending arrival, a ghost of human presence in an otherwise empty frame. This is the garden at its most domestic a place, where the transition from the living room to the outdoors is a matter of a few short steps. The walls reflect the light, amplifying the brightness of the enclosure while muffling the sounds of the world outside. There is a sense of being cradled by the home itself. The ferns create a soft barrier, a living screen that reinforces the feeling of being tucked away. Time seems to pool here, caught in the corners of the decking and the shadows of the leaves. It is a place for the first coffee of the day or the last light of the evening, a repetitive ritual of return. The stillness is not empty. It is full of the quiet energy of growth and the steady, unchanging presence of the structure. The wood of the deck is silvered and warm, a surface that has seen the passage of many seasons without losing its sense of peace. The path toward the gate is a sequence of deliberate steps, each one placed upon a cold, flat stone bedded in a sea of deep green moss. The walls rise high and gray, acting as silent sentinels that guard this small passage. This is the edge of the domestic world, the final boundary before the garden yields to the street, yet it remains firmly part of the home's interior logic. The lantern hangs motionless, its metal frame etched against the darkening leaves. The light is turning amber now, catching the soft pile of the moss and the rough texture of the gate's timber. There is no wind here. The enclosure is too tight for the breeze to enter. The stillness is heavy and comforting. To walk this path is to engage in a daily transition, a ritual of leaving and returning that is anchored by the physical weight of the stones. The moss feels like a carpet, damp and thick, absorbing the sound of footsteps and the noise of the day. The gate itself is a promise of privacy, a heavy shield against the chaos of the outside. In this small corridor, the garden feels like a lung, a place where the house breathes. The air is cool and still, smelling of wet earth and ancient stone. Every element is fixed, creating a landscape that does not change, providing a sense of continuity that grounds the daily life of the inhabitants. The water in the small pond is a dark mirror, reflecting the bricks and the heavy weight of the climbing roses. There is no movement on the surface, no ripple to break the perfect clarity of the reflection. The bench, weathered by years of sun and rain, sits as a permanent fixture of the garden's geography. It is a destination reached in a dozen steps from the back door, a place where the garden is most clearly an extension of the sitting room. The trellis creates a ceiling of green and floral scent, enclosing the bench in a fragrant alcove. The light here is soft, filtered through the layers of leaves until it loses its edge. This is a space of total repose. The bricks of the path are worn smooth in the center, a testament to the thousands of times this short journey has been made. There is no need for conversation here. The garden provides its own quiet narrative of growth and decay. The stillness of the pond acts as a focal point for contemplation, a small void in the center of the garden that draws the eye and settles the mind. The enclosure feels protective, a barrier against the passage of time. To sit here is to become part of the garden's own rhythm, a slow and steady pulse that ignores the hurry of the world. The roses hang heavy, their petals occasionally dropping in a silent, gravity-led descent, the only movement in an otherwise frozen world. The side passage is a narrow world of its own, a sliver of land that serves as a transition between the front and the back of the house. It is characterized by the rhythmic placement of gray pots, each holding the broad, architectural leaves of hostas. The light here is indirect, bouncing off the wooden fence and the house wall to create a soft, shadowless glow. From the small window, the view is one of order and enclosure. The garden is not a destination here, but a companion to the daily tasks of the household. The air is always a few degrees cooler in this shaded corridor. The stillness is absolute, broken only by the visual texture of the leaves and the grain of the wood. There is a sense of utility that has been elevated to beauty through repetition and care. The path is clean, the pots are perfectly aligned, and the fence stands as a sturdy boundary that defines the limit of this private realm. This is a place of transit that invites a pause. One cannot help but notice the way the hostas catch the light on their waxy surfaces, or how the shadows of the eaves create a sharp line across the upper wall. The garden here is a quiet presence, a reliable witness to the movement of life within the house. It is a space that feels lived in but never busy, a small, controlled environment where the chaos of the natural world is held at bay by the walls of the home. As the day fades into the blue hour, the patio becomes a room defined by shadow and the cold geometry of the boxwood hedges. The fire pit is empty, its stones holding the coolness of the approaching night. The tall fence creates a high horizon, cutting off the view of neighboring houses and focusing the attention entirely within the small square of the garden. The firewood is stacked with a precision that speaks of quiet, domestic order. This is the garden at rest, a space that has fulfilled its purpose for the day and now waits in the gathering dark. The blue light turns the stones a deep slate color and makes the green of the hedges appear almost black. There is a profound stillness in the air, a density that comes with the end of the day. The enclosure feels more pronounced now, the walls and fences closing in to create a safe, private void. The house is just a few steps away, its windows likely glowing with warm light, providing a sharp contrast to the cool, silent exterior. This is a place for the transition into night, where the air is still and the world feels reduced to this small, perfectly contained space. The textures of the stone, wood, and leaf are softened by the low light, merging into a single, cohesive atmosphere of peace. Nothing moves. The garden is a silent spectator to the closing of the day. The tiny lawn is a carpet of vibrant green, held in place by the weight of the low stone wall. From the terrace, the view is one of miniature perfection. The wicker chairs are positioned to face the center of this small world, suggesting hours spent in quiet contemplation of the grass and the shrubs. The midday sun is hazy, casting soft, indistinct shadows that blur the edges of the space. The enclosure is subtle but effective. The flowering shrubs create a soft wall of color and scent that defines the perimeter. There is no sense of the world beyond this garden. It is a self-contained ecosystem of peace. The scale is intimate, making the garden feel like a piece of furniture that belongs to the house. The relationship between the terrace and the lawn is one of effortless proximity. To step down onto the grass is to enter a space that is both outdoors and deeply domestic. The air is warm and still, filled with the faint drone of unseen life and the scent of sun-warmed leaves. The stillness here is restorative. The chairs, with their woven textures, mirror the organic shapes of the shrubs. This is a landscape that does not demand attention but rewards it with a sense of steady, unchanging calm. The garden is a constant, a small and reliable piece of the earth that belongs entirely to the rhythm of the house. The herb garden sits just inches from the glass, a miniature landscape of texture and scent that is part of the kitchen's daily life. The raised wooden beds are silvered by the weather, their sharp corners providing a structured frame for the soft, chaotic growth of the sage and rosemary. Under the bright, overcast sky, the colors are saturated and true, the silver gray of the sage contrasting with the deep, needle-like green of the rosemary. The proximity to the door makes this garden a functional extension of the interior. It is a space defined by touch and smell, a place where the hand reaches out to bring a piece of the garden inside. The enclosure is provided by the house wall and the kitchen step, creating a microenvironment that is sheltered and warm. There is no movement here. The herbs stand still, their leaves holding the moisture of the air. The silence is domestic, occasionally punctuated by the sounds from within the house, but the garden remains a separate, quiet realm. The textures of the wood and the plants are the primary focus. This is a garden of small details, where the beauty is found in the veins of a leaf or the grain of a plank. It is a space that is used every day, yet it retains a sense of quiet dignity, a small patch of the earth that is perfectly integrated into the life of the home. The alleyway is a cool, dark ribbon of space, defined by the towering green wall of the hedge and the solid masonry of the house. The slate tiles are large and smooth, reflecting the pale evening sky in their dark surfaces. In the center of this narrow path, the birdbath stands like a quiet monument, its water still and dark. The enclosure here is absolute, creating a sense of being in a tunnel of greenery and stone. The light is fading, pulling the color from the leaves and leaving only shades of deep emerald and gray. There is a profound sense of solitude in this space. It is a part of the garden that is often passed through but rarely lingered in, yet it holds a quiet power. The air is still, trapped by the high walls on either side. The silence is thick, a physical presence that settles over the stones. The birdbath, with its simple pedestal, adds a touch of formal elegance to the functional path. This is a place where the house feels most protective, its shadow stretching out to cover the ground. The garden here is a secret corridor, a private passage that belongs only to the residents. The stillness is a reminder of the peace that can be found in the smallest, most overlooked corners of the home. Every element, slate, the hedge, the water works together to create a landscape of profound, unmoving quiet. From the height of the balcony, the garden is experienced as a series of layers. The immediate foreground is dominated by the warm, earthy orange of the terracotta pots and the golden, wispy texture of the ornamental grasses. The wrought iron railing provides a delicate, dark frame for the view of the courtyard below. The light of the golden hour pours over the scene, illuminating the tips of the grasses and casting long, intricate shadows of the railing onto the balcony floor. The enclosure is felt in the way the balcony is tucked into the side of the house, and in the high walls of the courtyard that rise up to meet it. This is a vertical garden, a small pocket of nature suspended in the air. The stillness is punctuated only by the visual vibration of the light. There is no wind to stir the grasses. They remain perfectly poised, frozen in the golden glow. The relationship to the home is intimate, the balcony acting as an outdoor room that extends the living space into the air. The courtyard below is a silent, shaded well, a contrast to the bright, warm plateau of the balcony. This is a place for the end of the day where the light is most beautiful and the world feels most quiet. The textures of the clay, the metal, and the grass are heightened by the low sun, creating a landscape that is rich in detail and deep in peace. In the corner of the garden, the stone bench is cradled by the thick, waxy leaves of evergreen shrubs. The space is small and deeply enclosed, a private niche that feels miles away from the rest of the world. The water feature is a simple stone bowl, its surface barely moving as water pulses gently at its center. The sound is a low, constant murmur that reinforces the silence rather than breaking it. Dappled shade falls across the bench, creating a pattern of light and dark that shifts almost imperceptibly as the sun moves. This is a place of absolute seclusion. The enclosure is so complete that the house is visible only as a hint of brickwork through the leaves. The air is cool and damp, smelling of stone and green growth. The stillness here is heavy, a sense of being anchored to the earth. The bench, with its rough-hewn surface, invites a long pause, a moment to simply sit and listen to the water. The garden here is a sanctuary, a small piece of the world that has been carefully cultivated to provide a sense of total peace. The density of the shrubs creates a wall of silence, muffling any external noise and focusing the attention on the small, immediate details of the space. Every leaf is a different shade of green. Every stone has its own unique texture. It is a landscape of miniature complexity, held in a state of perfect, unmoving balance. The path is a narrow ribbon of pale gravel, winding gently between the low, mossy walls that define the garden structure. At the end of the journey, just a few yards away, the wooden shed stands as a humble destination. It is a garden of small distances, where every step is meaningful. The tall white flowers rise on either side of the path like a silent audience, their petals luminous in the soft morning light. The enclosure is provided by the walls and the dense planting, creating a world that is focused inward. The light is thin and clear, highlighting the individual stones of the path and the grain of the shed's timber. There is a sense of quiet purpose in this space. The garden is not just a view, but a workplace and a storehouse, a vital part of the home's daily functioning. The stillness is profound, the air held tight between the walls. The white flowers are motionless, their stems steady in the calm air. To walk this path is a familiar ritual, a short commute from the house to the heart of the garden. The textures are varied: the crunch of the gravel, the smoothness of the stone, the softness of the petals. It is a landscape that feels deeply lived in and cared for, a small patch of ground that has been shaped by the hands of those who live beside it. From the kitchen window, the garden appears as a perfectly composed scene of domestic tranquility. The circular patio is an island of stone in a sea of green, holding the wooden table and chairs in a state of permanent readiness. The high wooden fence creates a solid boundary, enclosing the space and cutting off the outside world. The afternoon sun hits the garden directly, filling it with a warm, golden light that makes the wood glow and the leaves shine. This is the heart of the home's exterior life. The relationship between the kitchen and the patio is one of constant visual and physical connection. The garden is a backdrop to the daily chores, a source of light and a sense of space. The stillness is absolute. The chairs are empty. the table is clear, and the air is unmoving. There is a profound sense of peace in this view. The enclosure feels like a warm embrace, a protective barrier that keeps the world at bay. The textures of the wood, the stone, and the fence are all part of a single, cohesive aesthetic of simplicity and order. The garden is a room without walls, a place where the daily rhythm of the house expands to include the sky and the earth. To look out at this space is to feel a sense of completion, a realization that the home does not end at the back door, but continues out into this small, perfectly contained square of light. The doorstep is the final point of contact between the house and the garden, a heavy block of stone that has been worn smooth by years of passage. The moss that clings to its edges is a sign of the garden's slow encroachment, a gentle blurring of the line between the built and the natural. The gardening shoes, placed neatly to one side, are a quiet testament to the labor and the love that sustain this small world. They are a part of the garden's still life, as much a fixture as the stone or the plants. The evening shadows are long and soft, stretching across the step and into the hallway beyond. The enclosure is felt in the weight of the doorstep and the proximity of the door frame. This is the place of transition, the moment of stepping out or coming in. The stillness here is heavy with the history of these movements. The air is cool and quiet, the sounds of the day fading away. There is a sense of profound rest in this scene. The garden is settling into the night and the house is closing its doors. The textures of the worn stone, the damp moss, and the leather of the shoes are all that remain in the low light. This is the garden at its most intimate, a place of small, everyday details that sum up a life lived in harmony with a small, enclosed piece of the earth.